How's it going, everyone? I hope you are having a fantastic day. You know, I was just sitting here, as I often do, thinking about ways to improve my games, and in doing so, I started going down the rabbit hole of what my players actually need at the table. How does D&D play into this? Because D&D is not life, it's just a space of play, so what do we actually need in order to feel fulfilled at a D&D session? And I kind of narrowed it down to 3 things, and everyone is a different mix of these 3 things, and almost everyone that I play with has one or more of these attributes more than the other 2. And being aware of these 3 needs definitely made me more understanding of what makes a game fun. And in the end, that's what a D&D session is all about. It is about having the most amount of fun you can because it's a leisure activity and it's meant to be enjoyed. So if you want to make your games more fun, then strap in because we're going to be talking about that real soon. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to be breaking down these needs into 3 categories. We're going to be breaking them down into the need for structure, the need for agency, and the need for control. And in acknowledging the way that players tend to lean on this scale, we can generally play better with them, whether or not you're a player playing alongside them or you're a GM trying to create content for them. Acknowledging where they are on the spectrum can go a long way in just making a better experience at the table. So let's go through these 3 needs in hopes of better understanding how we play D&D and how we can use it to make a better gaming experience for all of us. Structure. Another common term for structure that we use with interactive experiences is the term rules. However, in a game like D&D, structure can extend beyond just the core rules and can talk about things like plot or narrative promises or archetype promises, just things that we are familiar with in the outside world that will inform the expectations that we have going into the game and how the world is interacted with. A common example in games is that you will be rewarded for doing the good thing. If little orphan Timmy needs a coin to help his mother get well, then it is expected that if you give little Timmy a coin, that will lead to something positive in the future. It would be very confusing if you gave little Timmy a coin and then it turns out that their sick mother turns out to be the big bad evil guy, and the moral of the story is you should never be charitable to orphans. Like, there is clearly a set of understandings that we have as a culture as well as gamers, I'll call us, that there are certain patterns that should be followed, even if it isn't set in the direct rules, and being aware of those expectations can go a long way for creating a better experience at your table. Pros for focusing on structure. Players that tend to put more value in structure tend to create, probably in my experience, some of the most fulfilling narratives, because every D&D campaign has a story, but not all D&D campaigns have a plot. Like, what is the plot for that game where you and your friends just made a bunch of fighters and went from town to town killing folk, and then you just kept on going to more and more and more towns so that you could rob them? Like, there's no arc there, there's clearly no development, and that game went on for 3 years and it was still a great time. They are wonderful to play with if you want a really fulfilling and grandiose narrative in your D&D sessions. And oftentimes, in my experience, the players that tend to want more structure in their games are the actors, they are the storytellers, they're the writers, they're the ones that have actually put in a little bit of time to study these things and understand what makes a plot and a story fulfilling to experience. And as such, they tend to be a little bit predictable if you know what to look for, which is a really fun and wonderful thing when you are playing alongside them, because it gives you a more informed outlook on what they want to do and how to play with them and how to make their character and your character or their character and your world kind of lock in sync and just create a better collaborative experience. The limiting effect of structure. In my experience in playing with players that need more structure, when presented with a problem, they tend to look at their character sheet like an answer key. Like, when X problem occurs, the solution and the way to interact with it is clearly on the sheet. So if you are a player that needs a little bit more structure in your games, I challenge you to on occasion look outside of your character sheet to try to solve problems and think outside of the box. Who knows, you may like what you find. If you're a GM and you're designing for players that tend to like more structure in their games, look at their character sheet and their abilities and use that as an answer key when you are designing dungeons or traps. It is extremely fulfilling for them to just use the abilities that are on their sheet and feel like they were rewarded based on the decisions that they made before the session started. And if you are a player that is playing alongside someone that values more structure, maybe take more of the plot into consideration. Maybe start taking notes and try to interact with the narrative elements of the space around you a little more so that they feel like you are more invested and that there is more opportunity to play with them. Because the more that you respect the structure that they put value in, the more fun that they will have playing with you. And even if you're a player that doesn't really care too much about structure, if you interact with things the way that they enjoy, then you will tend to have more fun with them. And if you can do that in a way that makes it so that you're having fun too, then do it. It'll lead to a better experience for everyone. Agency. We need agency in D&D because games should feel interactive and the player input should impact the world around them and it should impact the experience. And that is the core of what agency is. In my experience, this is the most common thing that players need most. This is the thing that most people tend to lean toward, is an emphasis on agency, a feeling like what they do in the world and the way that they interact with it creates some sort of impact, creates an experience that they have catered for themselves, creates a world that is essentially centered around them. The best parts about players that value agency. These are the people that have an incredibly playful spirit and that no matter what happens, they're just there to sit down, roll some dice, and have a good time. So long as they feel like their choices are being respected, then the game will go on and it'll be a good time. Here's the not so good stuff about placing agency front and center. It can get out of hand really fast and honestly can lead to probably one of the more selfish playstyles that I've seen. Because if you are focusing on your own impact on the world, it can be really easy to forget that you are playing with a group of other people. Even if it's a one-on-one, you are still playing a game that the GM has prepped for you, and completely throwing their needs or desires or wants out the window in favor of you wanting to feel like you have impacted the space around you can lead to a worse experience for everyone else. These are the kinds of players that sometimes just want to watch the world burn because it's fun to know that you can burn down the world. Because when you're playing a game like, I don't know, Bastion or Gwent or Overwatch, no matter what happens, you are playing in a very narrow box where what you can do is heavily limited, but in D&D, most of that limitation gets thrown out the window, so it can feel amazing to get the main quest line and know that, oh, this is clearly leading towards some big thing and I want to go save the world, but instead what I'm going to do is turn in that NPC toward the evil lord and then I'm going to flip the campaign on its head. Now all of a sudden it's evil. And then a few sessions down the line, I get bored with that and then kill the evil empire and now I'm wanted by the evil empire. And then it just keeps going on and on and on like that. And it's just pure fucking chaos. So if you are a player that values agency above all else, be aware of what your fellow players want to do. Be aware of the hard work that your GM has put into things and know that what you are doing is a collaborative experience. And yes, your agency is very important, but so is the agency of everyone else at the table, and don't lose sight of that. But if you do that, I'm sure everyone else is having a blast playing with you. And if you are a GM making a game for this kind of player, know that you don't need to put in so much work. You don't need to worry about some grandiose plot or narrative for their character, that they're just there to play. They're just there to play with you. And when you create a situation where they can feel like they have had an impact, no matter how trivial or simple the situation, they're gonna have a good time. And forcing some kind of arbitrary structure and railroad in front of them is only going to make them resist and have a worse time. So freedom is the default for this kind of player, so let them have it. And if you are playing alongside a player that needs agency above all else, then just kind of let them go buck wild every once in a while. Even if you would prefer some kind of grandiose narrative, just every once in a while, you gotta let them play too. It is one of those things where if you can just let them go crazy every once in a while, they will be having a spectacular time. And if they are a good and well-mannered player, then they should hold back when interacting with this important quest NPC because they know that the plot is important to the DM and everyone else at the table, and they want to collaborate with everyone and they want to play alongside other people. So long as they are keeping your needs in mind and you are keeping their needs in mind, you should be able to create a really fun and interactive experience at the table and also get into some incredible hijinks along the way. Control. There needs to be some essence of control when you play D&D because you need to feel empowered. You need to feel like you are safe. You need to feel like you are there because you want to be. It's more of an acknowledgement of how things outside of the game are going and how our expectations of the world outside of D&D inform our decisions in-game. And in my experience, players that tend to need more control over the situation tend to make really good GMs, because when you are a GM, you have a lot more control over the game, over the scenarios, over the themes, over everything. So if you are someone that really feels uneasy not having a whole lot of control over the way that certain things are ruled, or the tone of the game, or the way that certain players behave, being a GM is a phenomenal way to bridge that gap and feel a little bit more safe while taking part in this amazing hobby. Here's the good stuff. They tend to get a lot of joy in helping others, whether that's knowing the way that a certain spell works, or helping the GM schedule things, or any plethora of things that just makes them feel like they are being heard outside of the context of the game. Or being the group leader at the session zero that is setting everyone's boundaries to make sure that they know that everyone is feeling safe and heard, and that the game that they are playing is something that we have all agreed will be fun for everyone. The not so good things. If someone needs a lot of control at the session, it goes without saying that they tend to impose their will on others. Even if they're not the GM, sometimes they will openly question a GM's ruling, or publicly state that the way that someone ruled something and the way that someone played was incorrect. These are the kinds of people that are extremely passionate and just want everyone to play the game that they have in their mind. They have a clear expectation of what the game should be, and the more people adhere to that, the more fun they have, and the more they deviate from that, the less fun that they will have. It's a clear correlation, which can make everyone else at the table kind of feel a little uneasy or shitty sometimes. But in my experience, players that tend to fall into this category are not doing it from a place of malice. They are just advocating for themselves and their own needs, and they are trying to create an experience that they enjoy, because in their mind, they need things to be a certain way. Otherwise, it's just not play anymore. It becomes frustrating. And when you were playing D&D, there's only a certain amount of effort that you can put into trying to have fun and play before it just starts becoming a chore. If you are a GM that needs control above all things, I have good news for you. You're in the right position to do it, because if there is a place at the table that gives most control, it definitely is behind the GM screen. However, be very aware that you are playing an interactive experience, and you need to take into account your players' needs and the way that they enjoy playing the game. And compromise is part of collaboration. I will repeat that. Compromise is part of collaboration. If you do not feel like you are compromising and you are getting your way all the time, then chances are the people that you are collaborating with are probably not having that great of a time. So take a deep breath and realize that it's okay to deviate from the things that you are comfortable with. So long as you feel like you are being respected and heard, take a chance every once in a while and acknowledge that there are still plenty of wonderful things to learn outside of your comfort zone. If you are a player that needs this more than anything, talk to your GM all the time. If you have a specific idea about the way that this character works, if you have a mechanic in D&D that you have a very set idea on how it is interpreted, if you have a build that is a little more up to interpretation, make sure you talk to your DM about all of these things, because in the end, it's their choice whether or not it works or not. And like it or not, if you're not behind the GM screen, that's just the way it is. And the best way to create a game that is most fun for you is to work very closely with the DM and to let them know what you are thinking, and work with them to create the experience that you have envisioned in your mind. Because if the GM has a different interpretation and it ruins your whole plan, that can quickly ruin the whole game for you. So be sure to just have an open line of communication to your GM, and you'll probably have a better experience. Players, if you have a player that needs control over all things at your table, acknowledge that they are probably coming from a place of uncertainty, and that if they are someone that is worth playing with, they will be open for dialogue and collaboration. And so long as you make sure their needs are met, they should tend to incorporate your thoughts and needs into their grandiose plans that they have for the future. So be sure to listen to what they're saying, as well as advocate your own needs to them. And if they are willing to work with you and you return the favor, You should be golden, and the game should lead to something great. And if you want a little bit more of a pinpoint classification of the kind of player that you are, there is a wonderful video on how to be a great GM that I will link down below that you can watch. It will get more specific into the classifications if you're interested, so check that out if you are. But other than that, that will do it. Subscribe, like, comment. You're all fucking awesome. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope to see you all again very, very soon. Cheers.